Thank you so much for joining me yet again, guys. I greatly appreciate it. So in this episode, we're going to get in depth in the idea that I had brought up about the note cards. And it's a technique that I've used for years. It has always worked for me. I hope that it works for you. If not, maybe you can springboard from it to another idea that you have that could help you flesh out your ideas. So this one I had done a few years prior, and I'm not really sure 100% where I got the idea from. It might have been a writer that I had been researching, and he had a tremendous amount of note cards in front of him, and he said that that's how he can keep things straight. I could understand that, to be honest. I have a lot of scattered ideas. Sometimes the endings come first, sometimes the middles come first, sometimes it's just these characters, I don't know what they're doing. So when you write them down, you can actually start to rearrange them in a correct way. But I'll get into that. If you haven't liked and subscribed yet, please do. It really does help me. And as always, I'm available for answers if you have any questions, comments, anything like that. I really do look forward to reading your stuff. So please don't hesitate, send those in. So years and years ago, when I was about 20 years old, I really started to get into writing seriously. I was always writing, but when I was 20, I decided to write a screenplay, and I had literally no idea what to do. Like, I had no idea that there's a format. I wrote it. It looks sort of like a play. I basically just jumped in and quickly found that I would get about 3 pages in and then just hit a roadblock. I was like, well, what are they going to do next? Well, then figure it out after about a week. Write another 4 or 5 pages, hit another roadblock. Then I was kind of thinking, well, maybe if I planned this out, we would be in a much better position. So sure enough, shortly after that, I started to invest in little note cards, and before that, it was actually like just on a legal pad. I had all this chicken scratch, and the way I think, as I'd mentioned before, it would just be little fragments here that could possibly be the ending. Maybe it's the beginning, maybe it's the middle. I really didn't know, but on a linear piece of paper, it all just was a jumbled mess. So then I decided, well, maybe I'll just cut these out, and I cut them out with scissors, and then I was rearranging it, and then I was like, maybe I should actually use note cards. Yeah. So then I hit up the local office supply store and started to buy note cards, and voila, like literally the silver bullet. I could put things together, rearrange them, mix and match, and it was just incredible. It like became totally streamlined, and that is what you need to do with your idea for a story. So I had done that for a couple of scripts that I had written, maybe a short story, but it was around that time I was heavily involved in screenwriting. I still am to some extent. During this period, about 10 years ago possibly, I was really into the work of David Lynch. I still am. But he had written a book, and I knew that he was very much into transcendental meditation. And I know a lot of people out there don't want to know about it, or they think it's odd. This is David Lynch, guys, come on. Nonetheless, he had written a book called Catching the Big Fish, and I bought it, and I promise you, it just absolutely is an incredible book. If you are into his work and sort of understanding his way of working, it opens up a tremendous amount of understanding. Now, that doesn't provide much clarity to a lot of his works, but you do sort of understand why he did what he did. And in it, he talks about not just the meditation part of it, but also being able to use note cards and writing down just about anything that comes into your mind. What you have to do is to just suspend thought to some extent, and just as these things come to you, jot them down on note cards. It could be anything, literally like a zoo, a sandwich. You just have whatever pops into your head, jot it down on a note card. Don't worry about sorting it out just yet, because that's not what we're talking about right now. We're just getting these things that come to you, put it down, have it all there, just get it down. That's the number one thing. Write it down. Now, I'm in no way sponsored by David Lynch or anything. I don't even have an affiliate link to that book. I'm pretty sure you can still get it. I would heavily suggest you looking into getting it. It does get a bit abstract. Again, we're talking about David Lynch. However, it will absolutely give you insight into a creative process that you may not even be aware of. And he does talk about the meditation part of it and letting that sort of logical part of your brain detach. And there are these beautiful ideas. And it's just this endless sea of beautiful ideas out there. And they're just there for you to pick out and just pull, and it's 100% true. Now, I'm not saying sit around and wait for ideas to come to you. You have to make an effort. You have to be a willing participant in this. You have to be willing to let it come to you with just fishing, right? Catching the big fish. That's what it's all about. So let's get into it. Enough of me yammering here. I think you want to see actual examples of this. The idea that is floating around in my head is about a little boy who gets a magical camera. That's it. That was just like the big idea. It's a magical camera. I don't know what the camera is going to do. I kind of do know what it's going to do. With that idea, I'm just going to put it out there. It's a little boy, magical camera, then that's going to trigger things off. And so that's the big idea. And when that is out there, I'm going to be catching the big fish with it. Again, a lot of what you are going to do may not make sense to you at all at the beginning, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. It's not meant to make sense. It's meant to get those ideas out onto something concrete. And when you start to do that, you then are able to build on that. So come on and join me, and let's get to some of that beautiful B-roll footage. So here we are. Basically, as you can see with the note cards, I'm just putting down random things. I'm just putting down characters. Whatever it is that pops into my head is going to be what I put down on the card. Now, obviously, this is somewhat sped up, but it does go pretty quick. And when you start to actually use the note cards and start writing things down, it will just trigger one thing after another, and you're going to have a plethora of cards. I suggest buying at least 100. I mean, I tend to go out and get those, 500 pack ones just because sometimes it does get a little crazy, I'll be honest, and I can't even read my own handwriting. Yeah, I use markers, but nonetheless, get as many as you need, get more than you need, because you will actually use them. They will be used, promise you that. So put down anything that pops into your head, from locations to characters, even bits of dialogue. When that is done, and then you actually can start to go through it and you're sort of feeling things out, feel free to flip that card over and put a little bit more detail into it, because sometimes those ideas just start to pour out and you don't want to lose that momentum. Absolutely great. Jot it down, even if it's just like some kind of cipher and only you can decipher it. Awesome, go for it. One thing you're going to find out is you're going to have a tremendous amount of cards left over that just may not ever get used. You don't have to use them. That's okay. You can either discard them or you can save them. I have a shoebox like right above the camera up there on my shelf, and it's a huge amount of cards that are the excess from various stories. One day I'm very tempted to just merge all those together and come up with some kind of crazy story, because it's a lot of different genres in there. So now that we have the note cards all structured out and lined up in some kind of order that would actually start to make logical sense, we're then going to get into the outlining part of it. So we're going to take those cards, we're going to actually assemble them in a way that resembles a more structured story, and from there we're going to actually type it all up in sort of a bullet point presentation that resembles a pretty standard story with the acts. The beginning, the middle, and the end, the conflicts, the other conflict, and then finally the resolution, and the climax is somewhere in between there. But again, right now it's all very loose, and we're going to be tightening it up. So as you can see, and as you're probably seeing already, this whole process is going to get more and more tight and more refined until the book is completely done, and then you realize how far you've come. That'll wrap it up for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me. I look forward to posting in the next one coming up in probably a couple of weeks. We're going to be getting more into the whole writing aspect. That is a bit more of a time-consuming effort. So thanks again, and be like water, my friends.